Hey, today I'm talking about 3 random foreign films, and the names of those foreign films are Battle Royale, My Golden Years, and The Money. First up is Battle Royale. This is a 2000 Japanese movie, and as you could probably guess by the name of this, this is the film that spawned the entire subgenre of both movie, books, comics, and widely popular video games. It's the Hunger Games, but way more violent, and came first. It's in a sense the Citizen Kane of the Battle Royale genre, which makes sense considering the genre is named for this movie. I've definitely been very aware of this movie and always wanted to watch it. Finally got a chance, and it was pretty great. I think it definitely lives up to the hype and definitely set the bar pretty dang high for the Battle Royale genre. Comparing it to Citizen Kane is really apt because if a modern person goes back and watches Citizen Kane for the first time, you're not really blown away or surprised by anything because it's been copied so much ad nauseum to the point where like it's hard to appreciate the original because you've seen it a million different times. So I was a little afraid of that going into this, and I wasn't really surprised by any of the story beats or anything we really saw. It's very standard Battle Royale, but that makes sense because everyone copied this movie. But even with that, I still enjoyed it a lot. I especially liked how there's 42 kids that are in this Battle Royale, and they give every single one a little story. Each one of them gets a moment to shine, and their stories are actually quite beautiful. They get you to care about these kids so quickly that when they die, it's sad. There are like definitely main characters in this, but I think they either did like 50-50 of like the main characters and then everyone else, or it could have been like 1/3 main characters, 2/3 everyone else. Either way, whatever they did was correct because it felt good, it felt right. I did wish we got a little bit more silly weapons. There seemed to be a lot of guns, and I just wish there was like a potlet, and I wish there was more stuff like that. And then I also wish, with there being so many characters, and they're all like roughly the same size and shape, and they're all mostly in uniforms, so they kind of all look alike. I just kind of wish there would have been a little bit more uniqueness to each character, like some more dyed hair, more like some piercings or something, just kind of change things up. Though I do get the metaphor of why they all look very similar. I understand that. So yeah, this movie was great. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I would definitely recommend it, though again, with the asterisk of you have to know that this is the original Battle Royale, and everything else that you've seen and experienced is a carbon copy of this one. But actually watching this movie is great. Yeah. Next up is My Golden Years. This is a 2015 French film, and unbeknownst to me, this is actually a prequel to a movie from the 90s. And actually, the French title I think makes a little bit more sense because it is 3 stories from my youth, and that's what this movie is. It's kind of 3 disconnected stories about this character. There's a framing device of an older man in his 40s, and he's kind of reminiscing on some things from his youth. And I enjoyed this movie a good solid amount. I was a little thrown off by like what was happening. So there's the framing device of this man, and he's like traveling, and then he starts thinking back in his past, and I didn't completely understand like what was going on with the first story because it's like this little kid waving a knife at his crazy mother, and I'm like, what is this? And the second story, he's older and he goes to Russia and gives his passport to a Jew who's trying to run away from Russia, and I'm like, I thought this movie was a romance thing. And then we get to the third story, and that's where the romance stuff is, and I'm like, oh, okay, now I get it. So in other words, it just took me a long time to understand what was actually going on, so that's what kind of brought this movie down a bit. Plus, also, I wish I would have watched the original first. I didn't know this was a prequel. I think it would have been a lot more fun, and the way you're supposed to do it is watch the original first and then watch this one. But yeah, I liked this movie a lot. I liked their relationship was incredibly flawed. They're 2 deeply flawed people, but it makes sense because they're like late teens, early 20s, so it makes sense that like they're so flingy and loose and clingy and like don't know how to be people without the other person and constantly cheat on one another and just like all that sorts of stuff. So I definitely found the movie very, very interesting and engaging. It just took a while to get into, and I wish I would have watched the original first, but I didn't know it existed. This one's still good though. So I would recommend this movie, but I think I would actually recommend the original first, even though I haven't seen it yet. I think that's the way you're supposed to watch it, so yeah. And lastly is The Money. This is a 1983 French movie, and the basic premise is this boy is a little short on cash, so he decides to use this counterfeit bill that he has, and we basically follow the counterfeit bill as it goes from person to person, and then once it gets caught by the authorities, we then see the fallout of all of these people having used this counterfeit bill, and basically how it destroys a whole bunch of lives. And this movie's really interesting too because it's almost like stream of conscious sort of, because it literally like hands off point of view every time the money gets handed off, and then like once the money gets taken away, then it switches point of view basically when people like cross paths over and over again. And that was just a really, really fascinating structure for a film. I don't know if I've seen a film quite like this before, but I really enjoyed that aspect of it. I do wish that it would have kind of done it more, that like once we kind of get the main clump of people, it doesn't super branch out from there. They do still affect other people, and that's really, really interesting. I just wish we kind of would have followed some of those other people later in the story and kind of see more of the ripple effects down that way. But it still was a good and interesting film. I would recommend it if you want something that's different than normal. It still is as engaging as a normal film, but it doesn't follow the normal structure, so that's fun and different. And it's not like super experimental or anything. It is different, but not really different, if that makes sense. Alrighty, now for today's rankings. First up, we got Battle Royale, sitting at number 16 in the really like section. And then after that is My Golden Years, sitting at number 38 in the quite like section. And then bringing up the rear is The Money, sitting at number 43, also in the quite like section. And this is out of a total of 93 old movies so far this year.